my challenge was a bit like, I felt like a fortune teller. I was here to create the personality of each of these hands. So sometimes it refers a bit to maybe the person's past or their present or their future. Everyone's been asking, how did I make them? I started out with a big box, an assortment of 60 dummy hands that I bought. I selected 17 of them, and I worked with mulberry paper, casting each of the shapes with layers of mulberry paper that dried and became hard. At that point, when they dried, I made an incision, I opened them, I reclosed them, and at that point I had really a lot of respect for surgeons because it was so delicate. So, okay, at that point I had my 17 white hands, and I have to say I quite liked them at that point, so it was a real leap of faith after to enter the color phase. So the next phase of the work was printmaking, and that's when I could use the Akua Inks. And to do these, I did several different printmaking techniques. For those of you who don't know what they are, it doesn't really matter, but there's dry point printing, there's relief printing, there's something called gelatin printing to get the imprints of my fingers in some cases. And there's also direct application of the ink itself. You're going to see that the writing in these pieces is really important. In some cases, the writing is very legible. It's almost like a bit of a story in itself about suggesting perhaps the personality of the person. Like there's one, it talks about a trapeze artist who reads tarot cards in a trailer at her circus where she works. In other cases, you can only read a few words here and there, so it's more suggestive. And in other cases, it's not, it's just purely graphic. So you can't read anything, it's just there to suggest communication. What I wanted to say is that the way the materials influenced my work, I've been using Akua for maybe 3 years now. And before this project, it was always with my prints, with mono printing especially. And this was the first time I used it for three-dimensional work. And what I really liked was that I could work very spontaneously at that point, at the printmaking phase, because first of all, there are no toxic vapors, you can clean up with soap and water, you can wipe it easily. So it's a very user-friendly, very pleasant way to work with these inks, I found. So it let me do a lot. What I did was I printed a lot of prints with on mulberry paper, which is the same paper as the hands. And it also let me go from one technique to the other, so it gave me a freedom and a spontaneity. And the other way it really influenced me was we were talking about pigments. I really love the pigments of these Akua inks. Sometimes, very often I'll just use them straight from the containers, but I find that it's also very easy just to nuance a color with a drop here, a drop there, play with transparency, add iridescence. It all becomes very, very easy. And I find that there's a new palette in this piece compared to my other work before using the inks. The other thing is when the show was curated, the other thing that was interesting between the then and the now was the influence of place on the piece. And the New York really is in this work. First of all, in a very concrete way, because Susan Rostow had workshops for the artists who were selected for this project, and to help us, to guide us in our project. And from her, I learned how to do the dry point monoprint. I had done 30 years ago dry point, but the very traditional way on copper, and I don't have an affinity to metal, so she showed me how to work on plastic and with the Akua, and it all became very fun. So there are 5 pieces, for example, this is one of them that has dry point. So that was directly related to coming to New York, and just knowing that it was for here was very motivating. Knowing it was coming to Central Booking also influenced me because I knew one of the focuses of the gallery was, or is, artists' books. So I think that kind of gave me the freedom to really write away on my pieces. And in that sense, I think it influenced me. So the whole thing, the whole project, it was a new theme, it was new materials, new technique, a new audience, New York, the whole thing was just like, yay! So I want to say thank you to Maddy Rosenberg for this opportunity. It feels like a very special night for me, and it is. And to Susan Rostow, Christina Pumo for coordinating, and to each and every one of you. I know some of you braved 3-hour traffic and floods and all kinds of stuff to be here, so thank you for being here.